Hi, I'm Greg from Omen Foils. Today we're going to be going over some basic techniques to get started with tow foiling, as well as the equipment fundamentals to ensure you can get the most out of your first trip. So logically, the first thing that comes to people's minds is what's the best way to get up behind the boat? And I find this wake surf style pop-up to be the most effective. It's the least taxing on the body, the most consistent, it's really fast to reset. So this is what I would recommend. So with my front hand on the tow rope and my back hand holding my board, I get into a deep squat. And as soon as I feel the pull from the boat, I get both hands on the tow rope and the board is balanced on my feet. And I wait to stand up till my board is kind of starting to plane on the surface. So I find that's beneficial for two reasons. One, it's less taxing on your arms because you have less leverage forcing yourself up. And secondly, you're pushing down on the nose and fighting that tendency of the foil to rise aggressively. So it's a super helpful way to kind of get that nice clean exit from the water. So while riding behind the boat, especially if it's kind of a smaller boat and intermittent conditions, is to keep your board as close to the surface of the water as possible. This creates extra drag so you don't glide out in front of the boat too much. And as well as if you do slow down and stall your foil and hit your board on the surface, you can often just ride out from the board rather than if you're really high, splatting down and nose planting. Here you can see me whipping in. So I'm just turning away from the boat and letting go. This part is actually really easy if you've got a good driver. So the biggest tip for a whip-in is pick a good driver. And here I had a guy, Gregory, he was hooking us up with great tunes and giving us really good whip-ins, which is super helpful. Having a driver that's not very experienced can make this whole thing a lot trickier if they're not lining you up right. So here's that slowed down. Basically, I'm just edging away from the boat as hard as I can to match the speed of the wave, and then letting go when I'm about halfway or 2/3 up the face and riding out. So one last thing on the whip in, wait until you're really close to the wave to start edging out to hit that top speed right as you connect. So now onto gear. The lower volume your board and the lighter your foil, the easier it's going to be to tow up with. And then of course you get benefits of better turning and pumping performance out of it as well. With a floaty board and a heavy foil, it's always going to rotate down in front of you when you're starting, which can be really frustrating. So you can mitigate this by pushing your elbow into the deck when holding the rail with your back hand. But if you can manage to get your hands on a proper tow foil board, there's really only upsides. Some additional points on the board to consider. Narrower is generally better for more rail clearance. I need about 17-inch width for my stance for max comfort and control. So as long as the deck pad goes all the way to the rails, this is about where I want to start with the width. You need enough length in the board for a well-designed nose rocker in front of your front foot, so that your front foot isn't raised above your back foot, which can be uncomfortable when you're riding. So I found this length to be about 4 feet and 1 inch. Lastly, the construction is especially important on these boards for two reasons. The first is that they're really thin, so the quality of the foam and the carbon laminate matters even more than usual to keeping the board really stiff and responsive. And additionally, these boards take a lot of abuse in the boats, more so than a prone or wing foil board would really ever see in its life. So you want a really tough layup. That's going to be important for longevity. For your mast, I think 80 and above is definitely preferable. Our 87 meter mast hits the sweet spot here for towing and winging, having that extra little bit of room for wobbles, chop, and aggressive turns without getting the wingtips too far out. And as well, it's not so long as you start really feeling the negative effects of a long mast and the detriment there when you're pumping and turning. So for your front wing, your foils, they obviously need to be sized for the wave and your weight. So try to get as much advice possible from guys who have been to the spot before. And of course, if you've got a local friend who's looking at the forecast for the days of your trip, this is the most valuable information. On aspect ratio, something around 8 all the way up to 9.5 for smaller foils provides a great balance of glide, control, and turning. And ideally your front wing the tips should also handle breaches really well. If you don't have a foil small enough for the waves that are there during your trip, if you shim your board at the base plate 1 degree nose up, this is going to help you feel more in control and improve touchdown performance when you're going really fast. You also want to make sure your stabilizer is really on point and tuned to the rest of your gear. You can check out our previous video, which goes way too far down the rabbit hole of stabilizer tuning. But in general, if you're feeling too much front foot pressure when dropping down a steep wave, you can reduce your tailwing shim, or do the opposite. If you're finding yourself leaning back and really unstable, you need more shim or a larger stab. And if you're a beginner or intermediate, it's always better to be tuned with a bit too much front foot pressure than not enough. The last thing is be safe out there. If you don't have access to a jet ski, and we didn't on this trip, there's exposed props, so don't be complacent about that threat in the water. That's the most dangerous thing in the water. And be a good friend to your crew. Make sure you guys are policing each other to be cognizant of that big risk out there, as well as, of course, focusing on having fun and getting video of each other so that you can look back and feel completely humiliated when you see how terrible you look on the wave compared to how you thought. So as always, if you're getting something out of these videos, please like and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions or comments on gear or any of the techniques I went over in this video, please drop a comment below. And if you want to get hooked up with Paolo, who put together our cruise trip in Chicama, drop me a line at greg@omanfoils.com and I'll make you that connection. And as well, we've got that limited release of tow boards coming out around October, November. We've only got a few queued into production, so if you want one, shoot me an email and we'll get you on the list to reserve a board. Thanks for watching.